All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are tackling one of the biggest challenges in HR, and that's how you prove, really prove, with hard data that all your people initiatives are actually moving the needle for the business. It's about shifting from just feeling like you're making a difference to knowing it for a fact.
And it really all comes down to what I call the million-dollar question. Because sooner or later, every single HR leader gets put on the spot and has to justify the investment in their biggest, most ambitious projects. The question is, how do you prove it was all worth it?
So just imagine this for a second. You've just wrapped up this brilliant $2 million leadership development program. Everyone says they loved it, but then your CEO turns to you and asks that one simple question that can stop you in your tracks. Did it actually work? How do you answer that with real confidence? How do you prove your program caused the success you're seeing and that it wasn't just a happy coincidence?
Well, to answer that question, you have to move beyond stories and gut feelings and into a much more formal process called impact evaluation. But here's the thing, it's not just about measuring what happened. The real core challenge, the secret sauce really, is establishing something called the counterfactual. So what on earth is this counterfactual? Honestly, it's the key to everything. It's not just what happened with your program, it's the difference between what actually happened and what would have happened anyway if you'd done absolutely nothing. If you really want to prove your impact, you have to find a way to rigorously estimate that alternate reality.
Okay, so how in the world do you measure something that didn't happen? Well, it all starts with a fundamental shift in your mindset. You've got to stop thinking like a program manager for a minute and start thinking like an evaluator.
And the very first thing an evaluator does is map the entire journey. You see, before you can measure if something worked, you have to be absolutely crystal clear on how it's supposed to work in the first place. This is what we call a theory-based approach. You're literally tracing the entire causal chain, step by step, from the first dollar spent to the final result you're hoping for. This causal chain has 4 really logical steps. First, you have your inputs, the budget, the people, the time you commit. Those inputs then fuel the activities, which is the actual stuff you do, like running the training sessions. Those activities produce outputs, which are the direct deliverables. Think number of managers trained. But remember, that's not the goal. The real goal, the whole point of this entire chain, is the outcomes, that real, measurable change you want to see in the business.
Now, this is where a lot of evaluations completely fall apart. The easy way is to do a simple before versus after comparison. The problem? That method blames or credits all the change to your program, and it totally ignores everything else that was happening in the world. The much more robust way is the with versus without approach. Here, you compare your group to a similar group that didn't get the intervention, and that is how you isolate your true effect. That's how you get to the counterfactual.
So, you're probably wondering, what's the engine that really powers this kind of rigorous evaluation? It's analytics, of course. But here's the catch. For analytics to be more than just a fancy reporting tool, it has to be part of a structured, disciplined decision-making process. A good way to think about it is like this. HR analytics gives you the facts. It tells you what is happening in the organization. But facts by themselves don't automatically lead to better decisions. You need a process to make sense of them. And that process is called evidence-based management, or EBM. It's the absolutely crucial bridge between just having data and actually using it well. Now, this formal definition of EBM is actually really important. Notice the language here. It's not just about grabbing some data. It's about being conscientious, explicit, and judicious. And look at that last part, from multiple sources. This isn't just about your internal numbers. True EBM is holistic. It brings together your analytics, the best scientific research out there, your own professional experience, and what your stakeholders actually value.
The EBM process itself is this beautifully clear 6-step cycle that you can use over and over again. You start by asking a question you can actually answer. Then you acquire the evidence from all those sources. You appraise it. Is this actually good, trustworthy info? Then you aggregate it all, pulling it together. You apply what you've learned to the decision, and, this is key, you finish by assessing the outcome of that decision. It's like the operating system for truly strategic HR.
So, what happens when you combine this rigorous evaluation mindset with an evidence-based process? Well, something amazing happens. You stop just trying to justify what you did, and you start connecting your data directly to real business strategy. Just look at this incredible example from Bank of America. Their analytics team dug in and found that the single biggest driver of productivity wasn't what you'd expect. It was team interaction. So based on that evidence, they made a simple change to work schedules to get people talking more. The result? A jaw-dropping 23% jump in productivity. Now that is strategic payoff.
And this shows it's not just about one-off wins. Research consistently shows that when you build a mature HR analytics function, it has a direct positive impact on the whole company. We're talking about boosting organizational agility and improving operational performance across the board. This is how HR stops being a support function and starts truly aligning its work with the core strategic goals of the business.
But let's be real for a second. As many of you out there probably know all too well, it is not always that simple. There's often this huge, frustrating gap between the exciting promise of HR analytics and the messy, day-to-day reality of actually trying to get it done.
You see, the promise of HR analytics is so grand. It's strategic, it's predictive, but the reality for so many is just getting stuck in basic reporting, just churning out the same old efficiency metrics. We talk a big game about replacing intuition with data, but then we're plagued by terrible data quality. And instead of becoming that true strategic partner, there's a very real danger that your analytics just get co-opted by the finance department to be used purely as a cost-cutting tool.
So why does this gap even exist? Well, the barriers are huge. Let's be honest, there's often a major skills gap right inside the HR function. Getting buy-in from senior leaders who have built their careers on gut-feel decisions, that's a massive uphill battle. Often the very technology that's supposed to help us, the HRIS, is actually the biggest roadblock with its messy, siloed data. And of course, you can never forget about good old organizational politics and a basic human resistance to change. This quote right here just hits the nail on the head. A pretty dashboard is not enough. Without a deep, comprehensive model behind it, that data can be so easily misinterpreted by managers who don't have the time or the context to understand it. And this points to a really dangerous truth. Sometimes, superficial analytics can actually be worse than no analytics at all. And all of this brings us to our final and maybe most important question. Analytics is an incredibly powerful tool. We know that. But it is never, ever a neutral one. The metrics you choose to track, the data you decide to highlight, all of it frames a particular narrative. So the real challenge for every single one of us is this. How can you ensure your data tells the whole story and not just the convenient part, or the part that's easiest to measure?